Mhm. All right, this is our first class lecture, and I'm just going to go over chapter 7, and really basically, it's all in the PowerPoint that I recorded on YouTube, so I'm just going to go through that with you and let you know kind of what's important and what's not. Howdy, Brandy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
I got a few people asking me the code, so just one moment. I'm gonna try to get them in here.
No problem.
How are you today? I hear your dogs.
I know. Oh my gosh. And you're going to hear them like nonstop. It's ridiculous. They're horrible. I'm sorry. I have a lot of them.
It's fine. You said 4, right?
Right. They're 4 big dogs with like no training, and they're various ages, including a puppy. So it's just chaos, like nonstop chaos at my house.
Having a puppy is like having a toddler.
It is. It is. And we actually have 2 puppies that kind of they keep each other occupied together, you know what I mean? But then they also are still puppies, and the big dogs are like they're picking up the bad habits instead of teaching the young ones the good habits. So
oops, hold on, I sent it to the wrong
no problem.
Paste.
Hi, Kaylin.
Hi.
How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. Sorry about the dog. Hi,
I have my toddler.
Oh, look at that. Hi, buddy.
Hi. You say hi? You say hi? No.
No, I don't blame you. This is weird.
He's so cute, Kaylin. He's so cute.
He's a pain in the butt. He's been hospitalized most of this year, and so he's not a big fan of anybody anymore.
That's fair. How does he feel about mom becoming a nurse?
He loves it. He plays with a little stethoscope all the time. He wants to be a doctor. So
really? Oh, that's so great.
I don't know if you remember my 6-year-old also. I think it was your class that my son did my homework and sent it in.
Yeah. Yes, I do totally remember.
Homework. I mean, he got 70%. I was kind of proud, but like that's still not what I wanted. But
right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah, my son, I left it on my computer, and I'm a caregiver for my mother-in-law. So I was using a Hoyer lift to take her back and give her a shower. And I left my computer sitting open. My son decided to stop his Zoom meeting of school and hop onto mine and did all my homework, for this class. And I mean, he got 70%, but like, I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
Did he just go through and click the answers or what?
He reads. He's really smart. I don't know if like, I'm pretty sure he just guessed, but I mean, 70% for a 6-year-old.
That's pretty good.
That's still not good.
Tell him to come to my house and do homework.
Seriously. That's so funny.
I know there's a few people that wanted to come to this, but I'm glad I see you recording because
I am.
A few people are at work right now, so they're not able to do it. So that works.
And I've got to tell you, the hardest part of all of this is I have no access to your guys' schedules. So I don't know when you have class and when you don't have class and who's got the clinics and I don't know any of that. And so if somebody doesn't like flat out tell me, which you guys
Right.
have thankfully in emails, like, no, we're in class until 8, or something. So I never know like when a good time is then. So that's why
Yeah,
I'm just
you
gonna
would probably-
record this and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I noticed some people wanted to, they asked me to reach out and just ask for, I enjoy your YouTube, and I learn a lot from that. But some people just want to ask questions, and maybe if we
Totally.
can schedule just like one live class a week to learn the materials would be freaking awesome. Because just having the life examples of like the different types of learning and different things like that, having it put into like everyday scenarios would maybe make it click a little bit more, because I feel like I have to read it like 10 times, but that's just me. And again, more people
I've never taught online before. I've always done live classes, so this is new for me too. And I've had to get over like looking at myself, which is not fun, and listening to myself, which is the literal worst in the whole wide world for me. So I'm just trying to like kind of fit in however it works best for you guys, because really that's my job. I don't need to pass the tests to become a nurse. I need to make sure you guys do. So if this is something that you guys are interested in, I would love to come up with like a regular thing, like once a week or something. And I know that some people have asked for the PowerPoint on YouTube, so I did that too. I think the supplemental videos are the most helpful for me. Like all the crash course stuff. I mean, I know that guy talks really, really fast, but if you read the captions on it, then it just helps. Like he literally covers everything that's in the book. And so usually I'll like have a basic idea of what is going on, and then I'll watch that video and I'm like, okay, I was right, or oh my God, I had that backwards. So it's kind of, it seems like maybe a waste of time, like I don't have to watch these videos, but really it totally helps. At least for me it does. Yeah. So I do recommend that if you have time. Yeah. But if you guys all like tell me, I have no class on Friday nights, or I have no class on Monday mornings, or whatever, I can schedule a Zoom time to I know a lot of you are all in the same classes, so I can schedule a time, to make this work.
I know Fridays we don't have any Zooms, but I knew a lot of people work too. But
totally,
even just having it recorded and whatnot and accessible for people to watch later, it's really going to help. Not just me, but other people that I know really wanted to make it today. So
okay, I would really like to do once a week.
Yeah, you want to get together once a week?
Thursday's a little tough because we do go to the school at like 2, but Friday would be nice because then we have time to already look over the homework or anything like that if we have questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So if there's no other emailed out a couple of times on Fridays or something, and then you guys can like either choose to go to one of them, or we can just figure it out. I don't know. I'll do that.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay. Okay. Now, getting to the class stuff, is there anything in particular, any particular questions that anybody has over the reading?
I'm going to it to see. No, I was really just hoping that we could I know. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out what chapter. What chapter is it?
Chapter 7.
This week. Yeah. So let me see here. Yeah, just maybe going over the reading like together, or maybe just correlate, you know, putting in perspective with like how, you know, day-to-day things.
Right.
So the memory was pretty good for me, but again, I know other people are struggling.
So,
but,
and you guys know, I'm assuming that the homework is open book, right? Open book,
yes,
open notes.
That's the only way that I've been able to do it. Yeah.
That's perfect. We want you to, like, you know, use the information in front of you. And then also, all of the index cards that are set up in the PowerPoint are literally questions on the test. So if you have every index card that, you know, is in the PowerPoint, that is on the test.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at that.
And you don't necessarily have to use index cards, but that should guide your studying to, you know, if you're just going to take notes or whatever, that should kind of be the key to your studying. And that's not to say that the other stuff isn't important. It is important and good to know, but the stuff on the index cards in the PowerPoint is like directly related to the quiz. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just gonna do like a really quick summary of the chapter, basically. It talks about a couple of different memory models and why they're important. They don't really know for sure like which one is the one that works. These are just theories. So we, you know, don't know if one's better than the other or anything. They just are guessing pretty much. So it's helpful to think of your brain as a computer, I guess, in this day and age. So the memory is like, you know, your files on the computer. And your brain is constantly taking in information, putting it in files and storing it away, right? Saving it and putting it away for later. So encoding, which is the first, I think it's on like the first page. Encoding is just the process of inputting that data. So you're taking in information. And then I would say the storage, which is where we're putting the memories in our brain, is just like, you know, saving your files onto your computer on the desktop or on your documents site or whatever. So retrieval is just the act of like going to your Windows stuff and like pulling out all of your files, clicking on which file you're looking for, things like that. So it's all pretty basic stuff. This is kind of the first main point that you guys definitely need to know, and that is explicit memory versus implicit memory.
Okay.
So explicit memory is conscious memory. So that is things like when you actually are physically trying to recall something. It's the conscious use of memory. Implicit is the unconscious use of memory.
So when we like dream, or
so no, it's even simpler than that. Like when you look at me and recognize a color, This
That's
color is
uncommon.
green. And you don't have to think about that you recognize this color. You just unconsciously recognize this color. It's the same with shapes. If you're looking at shapes, you don't have to consciously think, is that a circle? Let me think about, you know, it just automatically, you're like, bam, circle. So that's the unconscious. The conscious would be like, this crazy thing happened to me the other day, and you know, I went to the store, and so you really have to think about like what you're going to say before you say it, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. The next, do you guys have any questions about that before we move on?
No, you answered them for me.
Okay. We're going to talk about it more later, but that's just basic in a nutshell. The next thing that we are going to focus on is the 3-stage memory model. So remember, this is just a theory. We don't know if this is really, you know, the way it works, but this is just the idea. Sorry about my dogs, by the way. That's the puppy. So the 3-stage memory model kind of breaks it down to sensory memory is the first stage. So that is your sight and sound, basically. So you see something or you hear something and you hold on to it for about a millisecond. And then it goes into the next stage, which is short-term memory. Then it stays in there for less than a minute, and it goes into the next stage, which is your long-term memory. So important study facts for this one is sensory memory. Everybody needs to know sensory memory for the test.
Yeah, I was confused on the homework because you think short term is the shortest duration.
Totally.
But I had to go back and forth and back and forth. And sensory is the shortest
short term is
duration,
kind
right?
of medium term. So
Right.
sensory memory is the first stage of the memory storage in this 3-stage model.
And the shortest, correct?
Correct.
Duration?
Yep. It lasts 1 millisecond to 1 second. So it's basically, it's called sensory memory because it uses your senses, right? So that it could be touch, taste, smell. It just happens that sound and sight are the way that that's the most typical way that we perceive things. You know, before you touch a dog, you're probably going to look at it. So, you know, because otherwise, how are you touching a dog? So that's why the sight and sound are the big basics. We don't have any control over sensory memory. It just kind of naturally and unconsciously gathers information. And we don't go like, oh, dog, oh, tree, oh, street, right? It's just you take in a whole picture. And then if it's important enough to us to pay attention to it, then it gets passed on to that short-term memory. And if we decide it's just not very important to us for whatever reason, it just gets tossed in the garbage file. So that way we don't even, you know, necessarily remember. That's kind of like if you see a tree, you're not going to remember exactly each leaf. There were leaves, and you know there were leaves, but you don't need to like notice any details of the leaves because it's not that important if you're just looking at, you know, a street. if nobody's asking you about the leaves, you're not going to pay attention. So it's just going to kind of go right out. Okay. Let's see. So, oh, this is pretty important here. The short-term memory of the 3-stage memory, it uses a dual coding system, which is, I know, weird, but it means that your memory is stored in more than one format. So basically you've got video and you've got audio, or, you know, you can remember a smell and a sound from something. So your memory, your short-term memory brings in like another aspect. This will be on the test. So George Miller studied a capacity of how much we could hold in our short-term memory at any given time. And what he found was that we can only hold things in our short term for about 30 seconds. And the capacity, which is the important part, is 7 things plus or minus 2. So that's anywhere from 5 things to 9 things. So if I just gave you a list of, you know, 9 random words or 20 random words, you're only going to remember 5 to 9 of them in instant recall. And that he did, you know, he did that scientifically, so I assume he's correct. The way that we remember bigger chunks of information is by something called chunking. So think of it like phone numbers. Your phone numbers aren't just a string of 10 numbers, right? It's like the first 3 digits, the second 3 digits, and then the last 4 digits. So we automatically chunk it, right? They put little hyphens in there. Your social security number is the same way. It's chunked into, you know, 3, 2, 4 digits. So think about, okay, so if, let's see, your credit card or debit card or whatever, it's not just a string of numbers with no spaces, right? They've chunked it for you. They've taken, you know, these 4 and these 4 and these 4. So that way it's easier to do things like come up with the last 4 digits of your phone number or come up with the last 4 digits because you already know that it's chunked together in one piece. So it's easier to remember. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and then the other thing that helps us remember more is called maintenance rehearsal. So that is basically saying something over and over and over again to keep it fresh. So I always think of it like if somebody introduces me to someone, if I don't pay attention to their name and sit there in my head go like, you know, Tommy, 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 then I will forget by the end of the conversation. So there's something about, I have to kind of keep reminding myself, you know, secretly, consciously, secretly, what the name is, or else I'll totally lose it. All right. Okay, so let's talk about then the long-term memory portion of this 3-stage model. So this is where obviously the information goes from short-term memory to long-term memory. There are 2 ways that we do this. One is called elaborative rehearsal. I've discovered that this is my go-to way for all sorts of memory issues. So elaborative rehearsal means you're forming connections between the new information and something you already know. So, for example, if I'm trying to remember my friend Tommy, Here I will probably go like, oh, Tommy has, you know, a mustache, just like my friend Jim. So now I'll remember anytime I think of Jim, I'll remember Tommy, because I've just built a gap. I've built a bridge between an old memory and a new memory. I do that to study too, honestly. When I have to study, if I can make some sort of a personal connection to the text, even if it's like, you know, if I'm reading about schizophrenia and I'll be like, ooh, I heard my friend Danny's brother has schizophrenia. And that's all I'll write in the textbook. But then I'll always remember it because I've made it more meaningful to me than just a, you know, textbook definition. So it that helps me study tremendously, because otherwise it's just kind of like words on a page and nothing really jumps out.
So that would be an example that you just gave of elaborative
Yes.
learning or
Yeah.
rehearsal? Okay, perfect.
So you can also do like, think of it like the way that I taught my son how to spell his name when he was little. I put it to the song Bingo. So, you know, his name is Benji. So I did the B-E-N-J-I, B-E-N-J-I. And so when he was little, so that way it helped him to, you know, anytime he heard that, he knew like, okay, that's how I spell my name. So it's just, that's the same thing. Elaborative rehearsal is just building a connection to make something a little bit more meaningful to kind of help you access it. Okay. The other aspect of long-term memory is, sorry about my dog, that's my big one, is the levels of processing. Levels of processing model is what it's called, which basically means the deeper that you process it, the easier it is to remember it. So it kind of is one of those things where it goes without saying, right? So if you are really into it and really paying attention and it really interests you, then obviously you're going to be better at remembering it, right? So pretty basic. Elaborative rehearsal will be a tested aspect. So make sure that you really remember to do elaborative rehearsal with elaborative rehearsal, right? Okay. Does anybody have questions about the 3-stage memory model at this point? Okay.
So it's sensory, short-term, long-term.
Yes, beautiful. And the capacity, remember the capacity of short-term is what?
7, yeah.
7, give or take 2
7.
on either side. Yeah. And I can tell you that there will probably be a question like a true or false about it being like 10. Is it 4 to 10 things? So it's really important that you know that it's 7 plus or minus 2 in either direction, right? So it's only 5 to 9. Okay, so we're going to move on to something called the working memory model. And this is just another theory. The 3-stage model that we just learned about is very like strictly ordered. It is like, first it goes into sensory, then it goes to short term, then it goes to long term, and it never switches. So the working memory model, the whole kind of theory of this is that we're doing multiple things at once in our brain. So it states that it has long-term memory and other components that work in parallel with each other. So think about like your short-term and long-term memory are working together at the same time while you're gathering sensory memory. So everything's working kind of in a circular pattern instead of 1, 2, 3. It's like, you know, I could go from sensory to long-term, and my long-term could, you know, turn into short-term and things like that. Short-term memory is briefly storing information still that is currently being used. So obviously, you know, I'm not going to remember something from 6 years ago in my short-term memory. It says, wow. Oh, it says something about the attention controlling part of working memory is called central executive memory. But basically that is like 2 ways to do it. Your auditory sense and your visual sense. So they call that, and this isn't necessarily going to be on the test, this part, but phonological loop, that's your auditory. And then visuospatial sketchpad is your visual sense. So they say that's like the only 2 systems that are part of the central executive memory. The only key point from that section that you need to remember is the definition of working memory. So working memory is moving info in and out of long-term memory.
Long-term, okay.
Yes, and it's different aspects at the same time. Okay, we are going to move on to learning a little bit more about long-term memory. So long-term memory is included in both the theories. That's not a dispute between them at all. So when we talked about elaborative rehearsal, which is making the associations and connections to kind of help you bridge the gap to an old memory, that is broken into 2 different types. So the first type is called declarative, which is explicit memory. And remember, explicit means conscious. And then there is, the second type is procedural. Now, procedural is oftentimes unconscious or implicit. And that's for things that can't really be put into words, like tying your shoes and riding a bike, and kind of that, like, it's all about skills more than it is about the story behind the skills, right? So it would be like tying your shoes. Most likely by the time you're adult, you don't have to sit and think about it. You just do it. So that is procedural long-term memory. Now, declarative long-term memory has 2 different types associated with it. The first one is semantic. And that is basically knowledge for concepts and facts. And then the second one is episodic. And I always think of it like an episode in a sitcom. episodic memory is kind of knowledge for your own life and your own events. So whenever you're telling a story about something that happened to you or anything like that, that's episodic long-term memory. Does anybody have any questions about that one? Episodic long-term memory will be on the test. You'll need to know whether it's explicit or implicit. And then you'll need to know what it's about, which is, you know, your life. Okay, how are we doing? We're almost done, I promise. The next thing we're going to talk about is amnesia, which is really cool, I think. Not to have it, but it's cool to learn about. So there are two types of amnesia. One is called retrograde. And that is when you can't recall previously stored information, but you can learn new things. So that usually happens when there's like a concussion or some sort of a brain injury. And usually it's pretty temporary, at least for concussions. And then there is a kind called anterograde amnesia. This is when you have your old memories, but you can't store anything new. So in the movie 50 First Dates, if you've seen that, Drew Barrymore's character has anterograde amnesia where she cannot remember anything past her accident. And 10-second Tom has that where he can't remember anything past 10 seconds. And both of those aspects will be on the test, both types of amnesia. All right. We're going to talk now. Do you have any questions first about anything that we've covered so far? Okay, moving on. We're going to talk about information retrieval. There are a few different terms here. So recall is often difficult, and it's a limited probe, which sounds really weird, but just think about it like a, you know, someone sticking a probe into your brain. It's not going to go all the way down deep if it's limited. So recall would be like memorizing your lines for a play. You have to remember it exactly the way it's written, kind of thing. So it's difficult to remember exactly what order everything happens and what words are in what order, things like that. Recognition, this one will be on the test. Recognition is an extensive probe. So this one does go like deep down, and it's often the easiest way to remember things. And maybe that is because it is so wrapped in your sensory memory anyway, that it's easier to retrieve because you see it and it just automatically goes into your memory. This will also be on the test. It's something called the decay theory. So the decay theory states that if your memory is not used, you will lose it. So it's a use it or lose it. Obviously, it's not applicable to every kind of memory because there are some things that no matter how hard you try, you still can't forget, you know, whether you access it or not. It will always be there. So, but it does work for most new information. There is something called proactive interference, which is where your old information blocks new information being pulled. And then there is the opposite called retroactive interference, which is when your new information blocks the old information from being recalled. This next one will be on the test. It's called cue-dependent forgetting. So cue-dependent forgetting is, I call it dyskinesia, but basically it's like when you walk into a room, forget what you were doing, you turn around, walk back, and then you remember when you complete that step all over again. So this cue-dependent theory is like you recall the information where it's learned. So you physically have to re-walk that same path into the kitchen or whatever to remember why you went into the kitchen the first time. Does that make sense? I feel like everybody's done that. You know, you go somewhere and you forget what you were doing, and then you kind of have to retrace your steps to remember or to find something that you put down somewhere or whatever. All right. There's something called flashbulb memory, which is a very detailed memory that might not be correct. And usually it's because of stress. So when I was a bartender many, many years ago, I was held up at gunpoint and I had to go to the police station and work with a sketch artist and kind of get questioned, you know, a billion different times. And I tried to remember, I could picture what the guy looked like, but I couldn't describe it to get it down. And then it kind of, the sketch kind of turned into somebody I knew instead of somebody I didn't know. And that's basically the flashbulb memory, that it can plant false memories because of the stress that's related with it. So it's something too that is very suggestible and really manipulated. So, you know, people could be like, oh, I thought you said his lips were more like this, or I thought his hair was this color. And then you could be like, oh, maybe it was. Yeah. Yeah. Even though that's not at all how it happened. Right. So, so flashbulb memory is not usually accurate at all. And that is because our memory is not built to be an instant replay. It's more of like a reenactment. So you get kind of the big idea and the feelings behind it, but you can't remember, just like we talked about, you can't remember all the details of those leaves on that tree, right? Even though you saw them, that kind of got tossed so you could remember the big picture of I'm walking outside kind of thing. So it can lead to having false memories, which gets tricky when it comes to like court cases and things like that, if that makes sense. And And then, you know what, really, that is all. That is, you know, what the test and the chapter are about. And if you guys go for it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh
So
my gosh,
I
you're
think
fine.
on the homework, I missed one. So when they use the acronym Roy G. Biv, is that a form of mnemonic learning, or
Yes.
because I think I put acronym, but that is an acronym, but
It is an
the
acronym,
study
but
or it's mnemonic learning, correct?
yes,
Or memory?
acronyms are mnemonic learning devices. Yeah.
Okay, that's where I missed one, and I was like, how did I miss one? But I think it was there that I missed it. So
Right. Yeah.
perfect.
Yay. Does anybody else have questions? No? Okay. I encourage you, there's like a funny video clip from The Office on your links page where Michael Scott is trying to remember everybody's, you know, name, and he does his mnemonic device, which is horribly offensive. And then there's, you know, a clip of 10-second Tom from 50 First Dates, you know, just to kind of have fun examples of these things. You too can have elaborative rehearsal and build bridges between what that is and a funny movie, right? So hopefully that works. You guys, seriously, feel free to email me anytime, no matter what, even if it's a stupid question. There are no stupid questions, but if you think it's a stupid question, I would love to help you. So just let me know. Okay. And I will send out this link to everybody, including you, so you could go back and watch if you want. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. All right. See you guys later. Bye.
Bye.